Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse, talking about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the self-titled debut album from Algiers. There are some genre fusions that sound so insane at first glance that you never expect to see them actually work. Take ambient music and country, for instance. Two genres that have probably never crossed over until Devin Townsend created Casualties of Cool, one of the best albums of 2014, bar none, and highly overlooked. Or take, say, the entire genre-mashing careers of 21 Pilots, and they put together Blurry Face, one of my favorite albums of 2015. My point is that oddball genre fusions, they can blow up in your face, more often than not, but they also can create something special and defiantly unique, especially in a world where the internet has proven that anyone will try anything exactly once. But then there are genre fusions that the second I hear about them, they just make way too much sense. The sort of material that makes me sigh and wish that I had thought of it first. Algiers falls into that category. An American band from Atlanta reportedly fusing post-punk, gospel, and industrial sounds for a distinctly unique debut released through Matador Records. The same label that's been responsible for giving us great records from Savages and Ice Age. And really, considering how much post-punk and goth culture crossed over in the late 70s and the 80s, with the latter incorporating so much religious iconography, it's not exactly surprised that Algiers might take a stab at pushing together a less classical and symphonic version, more of a gospel-inspired take. And considering how strong the critical reception has been to this debut, I decided, why not give it a look? Was it worth it? Well, yeah, definitely. This was worth it. I expected to like this album. I mean, come on, a fusion of gospel, industrial, post-punk? That sounds too damn awesome not to like. But I was not expecting something like this. A record that gets righteously political with an intensity I haven't seen since Kendrick Lamar's The Blacker the Berry earlier this year. And yeah, that's a statement of quality because the self-titled record from Algiers is goddamn amazing. A pitch-blackened version of usual gospel tropes and soul into something that's far darker and more sinister, with industrial grooves, punk rage, post-punk nihilism, and lyrics that may be some of the most biting and incendiary you will hear this year. It might have taken a while for a fusion of genres like this to show up for some ungodly reason. I was surprised somebody didn't do it first, but my god, it's worth it. Now, of course, for a critic like me, a group like Algiers is a little bit hard to describe simply because the sound is so distinctly, defiantly new. I mean, sure, they share the same relentless, hardline, all-caps intellectual that characterizes Savages, and the incendiary swell that Ice Age brings to the table, but Algiers' influences run deeper to early to mid-80s Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Not an uncommon influence from Matador signees, I might add. The noisier post-punk sides recalls more Joy Division and Bauhaus, while I'd argue the more groove-centric material reminds me a lot of, say, Sisters of Mercy, with a thicker, more lo-fi sound and some of that operatic swell. But it's not all 70s and 80s gothic post-punk either. The righteous howls of frontman Franklin James Fisher recall legends of soul and jazz with more of a rough edge like Screamin' Jay Hawkins. And the choice to dip into more Afrocentric gothic tones reminds me a little bit more of the most recent Roots album, And Then You Shoot Your Cousin. But yet, even with all that, Algiers still feels like a fully formed, unique entity from the very first song, Remains, with the echoing stomp clap against a simmering wall like a chain gang that breaks into these waves of deeply set guitar, organ, and oily synthesizers with such a great crescendo buildup that I honestly wish the track had gone on for another 2 or 3 minutes to fully explode instead of just setting the mood as an intro track. And what becomes startling is how many different permutations of this gospel post-punk industrial formula that Algiers can create. The oily crackle of the beat against the noisy squealing guitars, lo-fi gospel vocals, and stalking bass line of Claudette, the buzzing synthesizers and guitars that drive into this killer mutating groove of When You Fall, especially during the second verse, the ominous bells over the skittering drum machine on Old Girl that breaks into this frenetic guitar-driven monster of a song with a stellar driving bass line, the creaking synth hits of Irony, Utility, Pretext that was perfectly sampled from an Africa Bambaataa and Sonic Soul Force track and then fused to this dark wave smash. Love that song. The charging grooves of But She Was Not Flying with those great piano melodies to the snarled, fast-paced chugging rollick of Black Eunuch and the pummeling walls of cavernous percussion on Imparallax that sounds positively biblical. Hell, even the slower songs are goddamn incredible, like the jingling hand clap and creeping beat on Blood, to the eerie minimalism on Games, all thanks to those muted melodies and guitars. They both sound fantastic. And all these songs are augmented with these gospel backing vocals, produced in a way that initially kind of caught me off guard, but I definitely came to like them. See, gospel music has been subverted with similar dark tones to this before. Like the Yeah Yeahs, they did it with Sacrilege, they did it amazingly well. But Algiers offers a much more lo-fi vocal pickup for their gospel sections, which can be a little bit jarring when you realize that said backing choir can be pretty bare bones at points, which might have been just an issue of budget or opting for more of that punk vibe. But the rougher sound and Fisher's distinctive rough-edged howls, they aren't trying to evoke the clarity and purity of traditional gospel, instead emphasizing just how creepy and unsettling said choirs can be when played through a much dirtier lens. Fisher himself is an absolute revelation as a vocalist on this record, showing off a ridiculous amount of soul and power as he pushes his vocals to the absolute limit, only really breaking in his falsetto range, which he rarely touches anyway, and that's good. The only point where I found some of the more ruckus elements not to work quite as well was on the opening of Black Eunuch, but comparing to the rest of the song, which kicks ass, it's easily overlooked. But that's where we have to get to the lyrics. And my god, while Algiers might describe themselves as a protest group, their material is so much more fleshed out and articulate than such a label would describe. In short, this is exactly the sort of political material that I really like. Excellently framed, starkly nuanced, and through the uses of gospel swell and great hooks, populist as all hell. More specifically, Algiers is looking to target the current state of racial tensions against black culture, and where Kendrick Lamar targeted the internal struggle of black men and women, and Lupe Fiasco was targeting specific institutions like prisons, Algiers aims for a broader cross-cultural focus. And in the cruelest inversion of all from traditional gospel, they don't spare the church as a target. That songs like Blood, Games, especially Irony, Utility, and Pretext, and the downright apocalyptic and Parallax don't shy away from burning out the opiate of the masses here. This ties into one of the more unsettling elements of this record, at least on first glance, and that's how much they don't shy away from putting black culture under fire either. I referenced The Blacker the Berry earlier, but Algiers makes Kendrick look restrained with supreme disdain as they target apathy on Blood, or being duped and distracted by religion and wealth on Irony, Utility, Pretext, or the veiled metaphors of Claudette and Old Girl, both which could easily be referring to black culture and black music being seduced and subsumed, losing all of its identity and soul in the white system. And again, on songs like Games, they step into that role of exhaustion, how they can barely maintain hope against the onslaught and they find solace in bottles and Bibles. It's their way out, and honestly it adds a level to the populism and framing that works so well. And then there's Black Eunuch, an absolutely fascinating song from the perspective of the titular character, who yet is still castigated and judged as the hyperbolic sexual stereotype of the black male, and the contrast here is really jarring on that song. But let's make no mistake here, this album isn't all inwardly focused, and it's here where I have to note that the genuinely chilling songs targeting the broken white system. Tracks like Remain show them as targeted and ragged that black culture, but not destroyed. And the song And When You Fall shows them waiting for those who would appropriate black culture to stumble and fall, often due to their own carelessness and their own fear and their own sins. But what's telling is that there isn't an attack or strike back against white culture, more just the ominous presence and knowing eyes, looking back in a system that knows exactly what they did and who fear their own sins discovered. They know what they did wrong, it's just a matter of time before they're caught and truly punished and justice is served. Even the most outwardly political song of the record, But She Was Not Flying, a track that shows exactly how the system perverts justice who favor men who could target black culture at will, or worse, get black culture to target itself. It doesn't really feature a call to action, but that's because tracks like In Paradise seem to foretell the inevitable here, that the intolerant, superficial, and hypocritical systems, they'll just collapse under their own weight, or just be consumed by those that they scorn. And the key word here is inevitable. There's a bleak certainty in this record that's very reminiscent of Nick Cave's most cryptic material, especially on his last album, To Push the Sky Away. Dark prophecies that seem to be coming true before our very eyes, especially nowadays. As such, the fade out on the track Untitled might seem a little bit out of place as it fades into a sample of the Chicago pastor P.L. Barrett leading his choir, but on some level it's damn near perfect. Not so much stepping into a lone ray of hope of things getting better, but coming out of a dark daydream at church, where the truth of that inevitable is waiting just behind the surface, just waiting for that right spark to really explode. It might be concealed in church, but outside of it, something bigger is waiting just around the corner. In other words, Algiers' self-titled album is a frighteningly visceral and intense listen, but between the blend of styles that's executed damn near flawlessly, incendiary and strikingly smart lyrics, and delivery fiery enough to drive it all home, Algiers delivered one of the most striking and unique debut records you will hear this year. I will stress it's a little intimidating to really delve into though. It doesn't shy away from abstract lyrics and metaphors that can be a little bit confusing and tough to decipher, and I do reckon they could afford to be a little bit more direct. And let's be honest here, this fusion of styles, it's a lot to take in. It's heavy music, but if you do, you'll find an experience unlike any other and one that's highly recommended. Easily a 9 out of 10, highest recommendations. It seems like every year this time we're getting a record from Matador, we get a killer post-punk inspired record like this. And with Algiers, I think we might have gotten one of the most explosive records today, so you all need to check this out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, this album was incredible. Go check it out if I can't stress that enough. But otherwise in the comments, if you want to leave your suggestions for what record I should cover for my 2-year anniversary, I'd be more than grateful for that. Remember the rules. The album has to come from 2014. Could be an album I've already covered or a fresh one that I might have missed. Just make sure to tag it as 2014 in the comments, and the one that gets the most comments over the next couple of videos, those will be the one that I will eventually pick. Just fair warning, I'll be checking you to try to spam the system. I'm keeping track. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.